Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Collider cast episode 108. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
And I'm Rory Summers.
Sid wasn't paying attention then, you could tell by the little pause.
Sid forgot
Sorry,
his
what
name.
we're doing? What day is it?
Moments of panic.
It's easy for me. I always go last.
We are here today with finally, only 3 weeks later than everyone else on the internet, our best of 2021. I don't know about anyone else, but I've had a busy few weeks. I know Sid's had a very busy few weeks because in his video you can still see mountains of unpacked boxes around him. I don't know what Rory's week's been like, month's been like.
Well, I had Christmas with two small children, and I did all the cooking and all the cleaning and all the housework and all the prep for going back to school.
Not that there's any bitterness in his voice there or anything.
I sympathise with Rory. I feel your pain.
But I know that this is a safe space because my other half never listens to the podcast, so it's all okay.
So this is more like therapy, is what you're saying.
It is. It's kind of therapy.
You see, I thought that, and then I caught her listening to us randomly one day, and that put the fear up me. So maybe your other half is doing the same.
Maybe.
I can guarantee that's not happening.
I know Laura does listen to this because she listens to it with me, which is why I don't care. I could either be really careful or just go, do you know what? It doesn't matter.
Oh dear. Anyway, we are here to talk about games, board games in fact, and maybe some RPGs, depending on what we get through.
I'm sure they'll sneak in somehow.
Oh, I'm sure they'll get in there. Now, of course, we're talking about what the best games of 2021 are. Well, we decided last year. Well, I decided because I had a very short list. Not just to talk about games that came out during the last year because of COVID in 2020, and again, we're going to do it this year. It's more or less the games that are new to us this year, not necessarily games that came out over the last 12 months. Part of it is because it's really hard to work out exactly when games came out because everyone trusts Board Game Geek, and then somebody else goes, well, I had that 6 months before. Board Game Geek said that game came out. And also because of COVID and all the crap that was going on around about that, I haven't played as many new releases, and I don't think there's actually been mega new releases this year. I don't know about anyone else. Thoughts?
No, I agree. I mean, just before this, I mean, I was sort of saying, how many more do I need on my list? Because I'm really struggling, especially given my crowdfunding addiction. The number of games that I actually received in 2021 was actually frighteningly few. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 on this list. So that's only one every 2 months, which a lot of people would probably say that that's quite a lot, but not really.
I'm going to guess that you got most of those at the beginning of 21 as well, Andy.
Reasonably early on, yeah. I think the latest one I received was... I might talk about later, we'll see. But that was actually an off-the-shelf game. It wasn't a Kickstarter game, hilariously. So we shall see. But yeah, most of them I think were in the first half of the year.
Yeah. Just before the problem happened with the real problem occurred with the cargo ships and transportation of goods. I think after that it really slowed down.
Yes.
I found. But yeah.
I've got to admit, our next podcast is going to be interesting in that regard because we always follow this up with a preview of 2022. And I have a funny feeling I might just overdub the previous podcast of 2021 and 2022 because I'm looking at my list of games that Kickstarters I'm waiting for, and about 8 of them I should have had this year and I didn't get.
It's frightening, actually. I went through, again, speaking of the crowdfunding things I have that are pending. Alora asked me, so how many of these games are we actually expecting in the next 12 months? And I went through and there's genuinely about 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
Blimey.
Now, some of them I backed in 2021, so I wasn't expecting them until at least this year, maybe sometime next year. But there are quite a few of them that are at least 6, 12, 18 months late currently because of all of the shipping crisis. I mean, this is nothing really to do with the company. I mean, there's a couple of them been slightly disorganised, but I think this is mostly just the huge shipping issue that pretty much every company's seeing at the moment. I mean, we've seen a few comment. They're seeing, 4 or 5 fold increases in shipping costs, possibly more than that. And looking at what they've been saying recently, it isn't going to get any easier. Things are getting more expensive, resources are getting more expensive. It's just, the world is getting a bit crazy at the moment. So, breath is not being held.
We, of course, can't play absolutely everything. It's physically impossible. Although we'd love to.
Andy tries.
Andy tries to back everything. But they then sit on his shelf, just like, most of us.
Don't you start sounding like a Laura. She's been screaming. I'm getting worried about the number of games that we haven't played on your shelf. Stop buying games. We need to play the ones we've got. Yes, dear. So I said that last week, and I've just bought ISS Vanguard. Not ISS Vanguard. Voidfall. Oops.
I thought you hadn't. You late pledged on Voidfall.
Late pledged, yeah.
Oh, you crazy boy. Especially because I've bought it and you're going to play it with me.
I know. Well, by your own admission, Steve, you haven't played a game in 3 months, so if I waited for that, I'd never bloody play it.
Yeah, but we're not going to get it for another 9, so the dog will have grown up by then.
It's true. You'll be fine.
Be an adult dog. By the time we're going to get, based on the previous discussion we've had, by the time we get most of these games delivered, my dog's going to be an adult. It'll sleep and be fine.
Actually, yes. Sid, Rory and Sid's kids will be fully grown. They'll be off to university.
Oh, I can only dream of the day when he's off.
Come on, Sid. He's only 5.
Yeah, I know. I've got a long time to wait, but you gotta have ambition and hope. But the only thing that drives you through the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
See, what is it the cat said in Red Dwarf? He said you got to think about all the wonderful things about having children. Like what? Like when they grow up and leave home.
Anyway, there are several games I've noticed on other people's lists that we haven't got a chance to play, that other people are raving about. And I would really actually love to play these, but I haven't had the chance. So one of them is Sleeping Gods. A lot of people seem to be raving about that. It's the Ryan Lockett game, which is a campaign game where there's, as far as I can work out, there's like no set game. You just play until you want to pack it away, and then you carry on playing when you open it up again. And it sounds... everyone seems to be raving about this. It's like a complete open-end campaign. You can play it multiple times because there's so much content there. New Descent Journeys in the Dark. It's not called Journeys in the Dark, so it's called something else, isn't it? Which is the eye-wateringly expensive app-driven game from Fantasy Flight Games, which I think comes in at around about £150 RRP.
Really want that?
Yeah, I really want that. I really want to try it. I don't even know want to physically have it. I think I just want to try it.
I've heard this edition isn't as good as the first.
First or second?
Which the one before this edition isn't as good as previous ones, is what I've heard.
Okay.
But I haven't played it. I would very much like to, because it looks like my sort of shit.
Well, talking of your sort of shit, the game I thought you would have bought by now, Andy, is a game called Golem, which everyone seems to be raving about in the Eurogame circles. You've got a shifty look in your eye. I can't remember the exact theme, but it's something like you are actually making golems out of various resources and protecting the city with it.
Okay, Golem board game. I am not familiar with this at
Prague.
all. But looking at the screenshots on Board Game Geek, you're absolutely right. I should be all over that like shit on a blanket.
That's not how the saying goes, Andy.
Whatever. That does look like my kind of cheese. Right.
It does indeed. Lots of worker placement spots, lots of colourful resources and tokens.
Yes, well, I shall be looking at that later.
I thought so.
And getting in trouble because of it. Moving on.
You've added the Great Wall to this list, Andy. I thought you'd played it.
I have played it, but the thing is, I was horribly hungover and had a 4 hours sleep when I did. So as a group, we've kind of missed it. I kind of went through it and did horribly badly in it. So I would very much like to play it properly when I am not addled. And it is an Awaken Realms game, and we do generally keep an eye on what they're up to. So it isn't a game that any of us have really given any proper time to. Although I say proper time, it took us 4 hours to play it.
It's traditional this time of year to do a special award.
It is.
Andy's Insert of Choice Award.
Yes, it is. And I struggled this year. For the aforementioned reasons, really, that there were very slim pickings for many, many reasons. But yes, I generally try to put this ward out because I'm a bit weird, as we all know, and I do appreciate a good storage solution. And as we are board gamers, a good insert is sort of the feather in the cap of a board game, because it's very pleasing to, just get out a well-designed, well-made insert and go, right, here is your stuff, or everything goes in the box where it's supposed to go. You can shake it around, turn it upside down, put it on the shelf, nothing falls out, it doesn't give you the water-deep salad, and, it pleases me greatly to see when a designer considers this side of thing as well. I mean, for Euro games, it's generally not an issue because you just throw away the cardboard insert, get out the baggies, and the problem goes away. But for things with miniatures, for larger games, very fancy things, it is a thing of beauty to open the box and go, ooh,
you've thought about this.
Exactly, Rory. And I do appreciate when people think about things. So, the list. A recent game, actually, that Alora backed, her first Kickstarter, is Caper Europe. Now, I may or may not talk about this later. And this is a 2-player game. This is basically a reprint of a game.
By the way, listeners, it's not because he's trying to make an air of mystery as to what his game is about. It's because he hasn't made his mind up yet.
Shut up! Don't give the game away. Honestly, well, there's the fourth wall ruined, shattered with a brick. But yes, Caper Europe is actually a lovely little 2-player game where you're essentially breaking into famous monuments, the Louvre, and all that sort of stuff to basically rob the joint and get away with as much as you can whilst getting in each other's way. And it's lovely little, it's only sort of a 5-ish, maybe slightly bigger size game, but the insert's very well made, very designed, everything sort of fits in, apart from one little thing, which peeves me greatly. There is Oath, which I know you're a big fan of, Rory.
Great game, really good insert, really smartly laid out, really simple as well.
It is. I haven't played the game yet. I've tried to get through the rule book, but it's about as twisted and impenetrable as a granite octopus, so I haven't made much headway there. But it does look nice. Although the first I actually laid it out. The first I thought, right, I'm going to go through the rule book, laid the mat out, which is neoprene mat, which is great. It's lovely. It fits in the box well. And I left it overnight thinking it's going to be fine. Kipling threw up all over it.
Oh, no.
Fortunately, because it's neoprene, I just washed it and it's fine. But had that been cardboard, I'd have been upset, to say the least. Mm-hmm. But he does like neoprene. He loves to sleep on it for some reason. It's weird. But then there's Merchant's Cove, which is by Final Frontier Games, which is the 4th game in the 5 Realms series. So this is Cavern Tavern and all that lot. This is all little boats and it's stupidly overproduced. And then there is Who Goes There, the 2nd edition deluxe set, which you and I both have as well. And that's very, very nicely done. Yeah,
it comes in a Kallax friendly box now, which is really good. And the insert is very good, unless you want to store it sideways.
That's the problem.
Or want to move it.
Yes, it has to be stored flat, which kind of goes against the Kallax mentality, which is unfortunate because it is lovely and everything goes in, you keep it flat and there's multiple pieces and all the things go together well. Although, as you pointed out yourself, it would have been so much better had they considered every card and every sort of item that goes together with one character to go in its own little section of the box. That would have been so much better rather than just one big stack of cards you need to sort out.
I want to homebrew, not homebrew, but make my own insert for that game. Although it's very good, I find it's a bit more faffy than it needs to be because of the amount of players and the variability in the players as well.
Yeah, and you're talking the game out of an award here, mate.
No, but one of the things I really love about this, one of the things I really love about the box and the insert is that on the side of the inner box, it's got a description and the images of how to put it back together, where everything goes, which is really handy for the minis, where the minis slot into their
absolutely
individual
right.
spots.
Yeah. Anachrony's Infinity Box has got that, except it's not on the side of the box and it's not on like a single sheet of paper because Anachrony's Infinity Box is bigger than Gloomhaven's box. It comes with a manual on how to back it, not just a piece of paper. It's an 8-page booklet. It's ridiculous. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's the kind of stuff that gets me excited. But Anachrony can't go on it because it was like from 2 years ago, so we can't have that. So
that's the Infinity Box arrived just after Christmas last year.
Right, we have a late entry. And for that reason, it wins. Right then, there you go. Because, no, genuinely, I was genuinely gonna not award it this year because they're all shit. And they've all got problems. Oh, come on, who doesn't pass the water deep test, Rory? And you've just talked it out. You've just talked it out with an insert.
I'm not arguing that who goes there should win it, but the Oath is a bloody cracking insert. It's really
not.
simple.
It's a tray. Everything goes flat, and it's dead simple. It's not clever.
But no,
it's not that clever.
It is,
and it doesn't fit properly because there's things that
simplicity.
slide around. It's not well done. Sorry, I have very stringent requirements because I'm very fussy.
I think we need to look at
good.
these requirements and assess their validity there because.
Game trays manage it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm just saying that the player boards for Oath do not need to be in a vacuum sealed plastic tray. They can just roll around because they're the first thing you take out.
They shouldn't need to. There should be a well-designed plastic sort of section that they just sit into and don't go anywhere.
This is what I'm talking about. Okay, right. We're gonna have to have a meeting about this, Andy, to work out.
Okay, all right. We're going to have an intervention, are we?
Intervention before next year.
So, yes, Mine Class Games win this with the Anachrony Infinity Box because it is really quite a thing of beauty. Everything goes together well. Nothing slides around. All the player boards fit in. It's wonderful. And I nearly put me back out picking it up the other day, bringing it up. It's so heavy. It's insane.
You might be able to just see it just to the right of my head there. I've put it on the videos for everyone. For the other podcasters there. It's an absolute beast of a box.
It's
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's massive. Absolutely massive. But yes, it's all got, so every player has got their own little sort of content and it fits all the expansions. And yes, it has been thought about. So yes, there you go. Mind Clash Games, Anachrony Infinity Box, winners.
There we go then. Next on our list of prizes is I'm not going to use the term Andy's put on the list, which is what he called it last time. I'm going to call it our biggest disappointment.
God damn it!
2021.
That term that you're not saying is the toned down version of the one I originally put in.
I know exactly. So this is basically just a quick list of things that disappointed us, things we were excited for and played and went.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to mention mine. I've got something on this list, but I'm not going to mention it because the game is going to come up again. I know it is, and then there's going to be an argument. So that is a little teaser for the future of this episode.
If you just asked for your brick back, is that basically what you've done?
Yeah.
So as I'm the only one in this group who seems to have played any bloody games the last year, I've put on now Canvas. Was a very bigly talked about. Bigly? Oh, God, I sound like Trump. Get my coat. A very hyped, but well talked about game that everyone seemed to go mental for. Laura really likes it, and a few of the friends that we played it with really liked it, and I thought it was distinctly mediocre. I really didn't think it was that good.
I know what you mean, Andy. It's a light game. It is not even a medium game. It's a light game, and it's a set collection game with a nice skin to it and a clever way in which it works. In which you have to overlap things. So it is a game where you need to collect 5 blues gets you bonus points, 4 squares gets you bonus points. But the question is the way that the cards can overlap and block up other things. So in reality, when you actually it's got this really cool, I don't want to say gimmick, but this really cool thing of you making paintings and transparent cards and put the paintings over the top of each other. But gameplay wise, it actually feels like a slightly toned down version of Mystic Vale, which did this for 2 or 3 years ago. Because Mystic Vale had the same thing. That's a deck building game, but instead of actually building the deck, you change the cards by sliding in more clear cards, which cover things up, and
which is also a boring game. So it's
that's like a deck building game. This is like a set collection game, but using the same kind of mechanics. It's a nice game. It's not. It's set. It's aimed at a lighter audience, a more casual audience than a lot of what we play. But I agree, Andy. It looked like it was going to be more exciting than it actually was.
Yes, and that's why it didn't stop me getting it back in the expansion for completeness purposes.
Why would it? Why would it?
Well, to be fair, Alora really likes it, and it's a really good game for our sort of Thursday night crew because we don't have time for like massive games, so it's actually quite a good game for that kind of thing. So as I say, I don't hate it. I just think it wasn't as good as we were expecting. I'm going to very quickly mention Bonfire. Now, this carries a number of caveats. So, a lot of people have been talking about Bonfire for the last 12 months or so. It's a new Stefan Feld game, I think it is. Now, I've not played any of his stuff before, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. But it's a Euro game. It's basically a point salad with lots of things that you can do and lots of ways that you can chain things together. And essentially, you're a bunch of pixies trying to relight a bonfire that opens gates to allow the forest to continue existing or something. The plot is entirely unnecessary. But I thought, I get it, it was only 40 quid, which is kind of punt territory these days, and there's a lot in the box, it's well made, etc., etc. I thought this will be good, it's right up our street, we like a Euro, give it a go. And the caveats are, I've only played it once, and I've only played it in a two-player game, so this is not really disappointing, more we need to try it again, but neither of us really got very excited by it. We didn't hate it, but we're both like, it's all right, you know. Cleopatra and the Society of Architects, been waiting for that for quite a while. The Kickstarter campaign was a bin fire, quite frankly. It was awful. It really was. It was just everything they got wrong. The quality of the components is pretty nice, apart from the cards, which are really piss thin. And I thought, this is going to be a really cool game. It looks really good. It looks fantastic. It was hugely overproduced, but we kind of go in with eyes open on this one. And we get it all together, and half the components didn't fit together. It was very badly made. I had to get a bunch of components replaced. Some of the stuff had warped. And playing a game, it was so simple. Really simple. It's kind of a set collection game. You play a bunch of cards. You can put one of these lumps of the temple on a wall or build a door or something like that. And that's it. That's all it is. So I was hugely disappointed with that as well. So if anyone wants to buy it...
Right, let's get some positivity on and get this proper show on the road then. So, best games. Now, normally we say pick a number. We say 2 or 3 games. I know we've all got some long lists. And I'm going to force some people to make some decisions. I know Sid hasn't actually written any notes down yet, but that's fine. We'll come to him in a minute. So I'm going to say, Rory, tell us about a game that you thought was outstanding this last year.
Okay, game I've played in the last 12 months, new to me, was Role Player. I got this as a birthday present in December. I've played it several times already at 2 and 4 player primarily, and it is just a cracking game. It's got that lovely little D&D RPG flavour to it as you are drafting dice and trying to build the stat blocks of your character that you are drawn, making sure the alignment is all in the right place, getting their class and the race bonuses. You're only making one really simple choice, really. Take which card are you going to take from the market, and then you place that dice on your board, and it's going to trigger some other abilities, and you're trying to get a certain string of actions together. It's a really, really simple game. I find really rewarding. Last time I played it, I was playing it with Kira. She found it amusing that I spent 5 minutes trying to decide where to put one dice. Actually, cripplingly. What's the analysis paralysis? I just got stuck trying to maximise my score. I mean, I won, so it was worth it. But it's a cracking game. I've got my eye on the Friends and Foes expansion already. But I'm not going to allow myself to buy that until I hit my January weight loss gain, because I figure that's the only way I'm going to lose weight is promise myself board games if I do.
That's a good strategy, actually.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like that.
I need to jump on that bandwagon because I've got quite a lot of weight to shift now.
Bit of Christmas trifle still around.
Yeah, from 2 years ago, yeah.
I agree with you, Rory. I believe that's a really good game, Role Player. I actually really love it. And it's weird because in reality it's very, very similar game to Sagrada. They're both... They both work in the same way. You pick some dice from a pool and you're trying to put it on some kind of grid, but the actual details of how they work are differently. And I just do think Role Player is just that little bit nicer. Although I always end up with crap equipment, so I end up losing the equipment on it.
No, I agree too. I really like it. I think it's because it's slightly chunkier than Sagrada as well. The Sagrada dice seem a bit sort of small and flimsy is the wrong word, but a bit finicky. Whereas the role player dice are really big, chunky sort of inch cubes.
Yeah.
It's just nicer.
So I'm going to try and pick. I'm trying to pick a game here. What should I pick from this list? Right, I'd say my most controversial first because it's actually not controversial with other people. It's controversial in my head. The most played game, the game I've played the most in the last 12 months, is The Initiative, and this is controversial because I keep playing it because I still can't work out if I like it or not. But I'm beginning to think that it must be a good game, otherwise I wouldn't keep playing it, right? So this is, in its simplest form, it's a cooperative game in which what you're trying to do is you're trying to find clues that are spread across the map. These clues are little symbols, they're in dossiers, which are little tiles you turn over and reveal them. But these clues then go onto this little checkerboard, which is like your Wheel of Fortune kind of thing. And as you reveal a clue, you can flip over that symbol, which will reveal a letter or a number or something on the card for the mission you're on. After you've collected so many of these, you can guess what the solution is to the puzzle, whether it's a word, a phrase, I said an equation or something. And you can win the game if you've got that right. But the way in which the game works is to take an action, you have to play a card. And the cards are numbered 1 through 12, and you have to play a card of the action onto the action space, or onto one of the 4 actions you can take, which is of a higher number than what's already there. So it's not just a simple case of just going around the board and doing it and like pandemic style, using your 4 actions efficiently. There's also another level of being able to use the cards in the deck efficiently to take the actions in the right order, and a bit of conversing amongst people about how you go about this. And I think that bit's really, really good, actually. The puzzle element of the game kind of obfuscates how clever this kind of action selection system is and how you have to work together quite tightly. Why it's controversial is because it works if anyone's played, I think the best example is Charterstone. It's not a legacy game, but it's a game which teases out rules as you play. It's got a campaign, it's got a story, and the story's got a comic book. And every time you play, another little rule is added. And that's the bit which annoys me, because the more I play, the more interesting the rules become. And much like Charterstone, I feel as if the first games were boring, and the games are getting better as more things are added. And they could have been added at the beginning to make it a standout game right from the start, rather than having to play 12, 24 games to get to the point where you've got something interesting going on. Now, they are quick games. You can play this game in 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how clever you are, because there is actual cleverness depending on how you solve this puzzle. There is a puzzle for every mission. If you know the answer to it, you can get it and do it quick. If you're dumb like me, then you can't. And you have to get every single bloody clue.
Is Initiative the one that you guys played at your place, Steve, after I left?
Yes. Because it's we played Burgle Brothers, and
that
the
was
theme of fact how you actually play the game is similar. You've got someone you've basically got to break into, and as I said, as the rules go on, it puts like guard dogs in and other agents in that have to move around and things like that. But I think its biggest sin is also its kind of biggest like selling point, in that it slowly introduces the rules as you play over game, which means the first game is a bit kind of like, well, it was all right, and then 3-4 games in, you're starting to introduce all these more rules that make it interesting. Which why I'm still undecided on it, but I think it's worth mentioning and putting on this list just because it's doing something different in the way it does this. I felt it doesn't feel like all the other games in my collection, although there are elements that it pulls in from other games. It doesn't feel. It feels something a little bit fresh in that regard.
Because this isn't the same feeling you have with Blood Rage, then, because you keep flip flopping on that as well.
Now, Blood Rage. We played the same game over and over again, and I love Blood Rage now.
Right.
But that was one of those ones where the first game I was like, oh, it feels a bit unbalanced. The second game I went, oh, actually, no, this is quite fun. Third game, no, this is mega unbalanced. Fourth game, I've worked out why it's unbalanced now. Right.
Okay, yeah. So do you think, because I played this with you, and the action mechanics are very, very clever. So playing the cards bit is very, very good. I did like that, which kind of introduces this almost this automatic ticking clock. But Would you say that the game would be as interesting if all the rules were available at the start? Because if that was the case, then I think it'd get boring very, very quickly.
Which is the dichotomy of this game, I think. In that, that's what I say. I can't outright say it's an amazing game. I can't stop thinking about it. If that makes sense. So it's the game which is on my mind more than any other game because of this. And I agree with you. I'm not sure, Andy. I'm not sure whether he'd have it's that whole thing about playing Pandemic over and over again versus playing Pandemic Legacy.
Yes.
Pandemic was a solid game to begin with, and then Pandemic Legacy does this thing and makes it even better because it changes.
Yes.
But then you go back to vanilla Pandemic and you kind of go, well,
Yeah, I've got that now. So I think Pandemic Legacy has really spoiled Pandemic for me because Alora takes it. She takes Pandemic Thule, which admittedly is, I think, slightly more interesting to our Thursday night. But yeah, vanilla Pandemic now. I'm like, I don't really want to.
Just throw in all the expansions.
Well, yeah, I do like in the lab with the little petri dishes and stuff.
That's
really
good,
cool.
Yeah,
it's a really
Virulent
great
Strain's
addition.
Good. Yeah,
That's
Mutation.
Yeah, that's it.
The Hinterlands. Add them all at the same time. It's a brilliant game.
I am going to pick Dwellings of Eldervale. Now, you all haven't played this, so this was potentially up for an insert of choice, but as it was out in 2020, I didn't. Now, this is a kind of... Jesus, what kind of game is it? It's kind of a worker placement in most aspects, in the sense you've got a map, and the idea is that you're just supposed to be building houses in this sort of random realm. And there's basically loads of hexes on that form the board, and it's different every time. But in this sort of realm are a bunch of monsters that are kind of roaming around. So it's a kind of semi-co-op in that it's a race to get all your stuff out, and the first to build all the houses essentially gets... is probably going to win, but at least will end the game at that point. But you all have to basically take on these bloody great monsters. Now, this is the one that I mentioned a little while ago, Steve, that has the ridiculously overproduced noisy bases. So as soon as you move a monster around, it makes a scream, it makes a noise and a roar. It's stupid, it's a gimmick, it's completely unnecessary, but it's awesome. And but the monsters roam around, and if you go anywhere near it, it will immediately attack you. And it's kind of got this risk-like combat where you roll lots of dice and you compare the highest to the highest, the next highest to the next highest, and so on and so forth. And the person who basically ends up with the highest score wins. And but once the monster's dead, it's dead. So you'll get some extra stuff for it. And that's basically it. But you can get resources by going places and all these kinds of things and generate magic. But it's a very, very clever game. There's a lot of player interaction with it because you can start fights between players. If you go too near to them, they can call in reinforcements, and every player clan, as it were, is asymmetric. So you can all play as different people. And I think there's something like 16 different clans. And 8 different sort of player colours, although some of them are quite difficult to differentiate, especially with my dog eyes. But it's a really clever game, and I think with more players, because I only played it as a 2-player so far, obviously because of lockdown.
That's not true.
I think. Oh yes, we played it with you. You did play it. I forgot. Yes,
we did a 3-player game of it.
We did, and it was much better. Because there was a bit more interaction.
Yeah, we actually fought each other. So the big takeaway I think you and Alora had from it is that we actually bashed into each other on the board.
Yes, exactly right. There was a bit more in the interaction, because in a 2-player you can kind of avoid each other. With the third player there, they kind of get in the way and you can't really avoid it. So that's good. Yes, I'd forgotten about that. Apologies, Sid. Yes, you're right. And it plays up to, is it 6? Potentially, but you can have quite a few players anyway, and the game expands obviously accordingly. You do a bit more exploration and add more hexes as you go. But yeah, it's a really, really clever game. I really enjoy it. It's quite a sort of thinky game, despite its ridiculously Ameritrash appearance. It's a kind of Euro game in a sort of American pants, as it were.
Yeah,
but yes,
the noisy bases were totally unnecessary, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely ridiculous. It's completely unnecessary, but really quite cool. So yes, that's Dwellings of Eldervale, which I think we really enjoyed.
Now, Mr. Gill, you haven't written anything on your shortlist.
No, there's a reason for this, Steve.
Is that because you've moved house?
My dog ate my homework. No, in seriousness, yeah.
Actually, you say that. I was saying to Andy just before we started this podcast, the dog got into my work bag yesterday, pulled out one of my reports I'd written, and was busy tearing it up behind me. And I came up, what's that noise? It's like, oh crap. I can't exactly go to my boss and go, well, you won't believe me, but the dog has actually eaten my reports.
Outstanding.
No, in seriousness, so I did think about adding some stuff. And then I realised that this year, unlike last year, I could have actually added a few things to it, but you guys have covered them all off, more or less, in one way or another, because you are who I play with.
You talk about them and we'll cross them off so we can't talk about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Right, so let's have we think. See, I've been mulling this over, and I think the one that I enjoyed the most this year was actually Unfathomable. Unfathomable. And I think it's because I've played it more than once. So I've had quite a different experience of it. So we've had the game where I played with Steve, Andy, and Alora. And was that it? Or was somebody else? I can't remember anyway. 3 or 4 of us played it. And after you guys had been talking about Battlestar and all that kind of stuff, I was quite hyped about it, really looking forward to it. And then, all the little pieces of it and the characters and the little stories you had with it and everything that was produced for it, I was really excited about playing it. And I didn't feel disappointed about playing it either when I actually sat down and played it with you guys.
I did.
Okay.
Throwing it out there quickly now. Just
wow.
Oh, God, no. I think that's interesting because why? Why did you not enjoy it?
Like you, I'm a big fan of Battlestar Galactica. I was gutted that I can't buy the game anymore without spending an inordinate amount of money on it. Really excited to play it. I was actually tempted to just buy Unfathomable based on what I'd heard Andy said, and I was gutted that I couldn't be on the last podcast when you were chatting about it. And I think my problem with it would be the same in Battlestar Galactica, is that I just felt there was very little player agency. I mean, I was thinking about it earlier today, we played exactly 2 months ago, and I could probably tell you exactly what I did in every turn of that game now. In my first turn, I moved and shot some monsters. In my second turn, I moved and shot some monsters. My third turn, I moved, saved a passenger. I just felt I waited. I mean, there were 6 of us playing. I waited 5 people to take their turn, and I just did the same thing over again. And the character I had and the cards I was drawn, I felt there were times where, and because I was human as well, I actually felt it was probably a more boring game, because not boring, but wasn't as exciting because I was human. So, when you put the cards into the pot, there were times where, well, I can't help. I haven't got those cards. I can't help. And then there's times when I can help, and I was like, well, I'll put some cards in then. And that was it. I felt there really wasn't much to do. It's like, if I can help, I will. And in my turn, I'll go shoot something and move around to be able to shoot something next turn. And that was the game for 3 hours.
I found Unfathomable was better than Battlestar for that, because if you were the pilot in Battlestar, that's all you could do, because you went your little Viper, you went out and you shot some raiders, and then you went back in because you had to do a warp jump, FTL jump, and then you launched again and you shot some raiders and you went back in.
So that was me. I mean, I was really, really excited to play this game, and I think it looks fantastic, except for the small pointless cards.
I agree with you on that. I fucking hate those cards.
And I'm really glad we played it, but equally, I'm really glad I didn't buy it before having played it. If I'd have bought it just on what you guys said, because it sounded amazing, and I say I've always been interested in this game in its previous skin, and for me, it was a bullet dodged.
So interestingly for me, I kind of see what I kind of understand what you're saying, but on the flip side, I want to keep going back to it. Because I feel like there's more to that game that I yet haven't played, and that's kind of why I bring it up as kind of one of the ones for this year. Really, is my first play of it was really fun, really enjoyable. My second play of it, I felt like poked at different things, and I picked a more difficult character and played it in a very different way. And now I want to go back and I want to start. I'm kind of hoping to be a deep one or a hybrid or something like that, because I want to see what that feels like, and I almost want to feel like what the cultists feel like, and I kind of want to. I just really want to go back and play it again, and then again. And that's why I'm really quite excited about it.
It's the kind of game, because I mean I've played BSG 3, 4, 5 times now, and I've played Unfathomable 3 or 4 times as well. And it's the kind of game that definitely gets better the more you and the group play. Because the first time you play it, new players aren't really sure how to handle being, a cultist or a Cylon. So they're not quite sure when to play their cards, when to be a twat. And so it makes it a bit easier for the humans, and I think a bit less interesting, as you point out, Rory. Whereas if you're playing some fairly experienced Cylons, for example, the game is a lot harder. Now, I will say, I think Unfathomable is actually easier than BSG for the humans. A lot easier, because there's less for the humans to do, because they don't have the things like the pilots and shooting down the ships and stuff like that. So their resources aren't quite as thinly spread in Unfathomable as they are in BSG. But I think it's definitely a game that definitely rewards plays. More
plays with people that have played it more as well.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
I can see that, but I think I also, the other problem I had, it's a really silly one, like the small cards thing. Thematically, it just didn't make sense to me that, halfway we're at this point of the game here, you might now be a cultist.
Because you're hybrids, not cultists. So the theme is that your genes might not express straight away.
Yeah.
That's a comment from someone who's not read Escape from Innsmouth.
Yes,
you're right. Fair enough.
So needs to go back and do his homework.
I tried reading the Necronomicon, but I got bored after about 7 stories. To be honest, I found it really a lot of hard work.
The thing with Lovecraft is pick the stories.
Yeah, right.
Basically, read Innsmouth and then a couple. Read Call of Cthulhu and a couple of others.
Cool.
Because there are a lot of windy, old prose, weird stories in there. But the Escape from Innsmouth is what Unfathomable is based on, and it is make logical sense from the way that story works, that you could be a hybrid and not know, basically.
Yes.
So
it's like the Cylon sympathizers in BSG. If you watch the TV series, they don't know they're Cylons. The Cylons that kind of get awoken later on in the series. Spoilers. They don't know that they're Cylons, which is kind of horseshit in a way, but it kind of works with the program. So it's the same sort of idea.
Mm. Right then, I should probably pick another game, shouldn't I?
So not Rory's go.
Oh, well, I'm going in a random order, I think, now.
Fine.
We can go in... I'm mixing it up. I'm going
Gaffer's
next.
choice.
Right. One game which has, again, really intrigued me, and it's changed my mind about a particular genre of this game, and that is Hadrian's Wall. Now, I said it changed my mind about a particularly good genre. You may remember the last few years, the board gaming world has been awash with roll and writes, which are games in which you roll dice and tick little boxes off. So Yahtzee, of course, is the classic, and there's been all kinds of variations of that and a massive rush to turn every single gaming IP into a roll and write. Along with that, there's also what has been nicknamed the flip and write, which is basically the same kind of game, but rather than it being rolling a dice, you've got flipping a card, which reveals things. Now, I actually come to think of it, there's some really good examples of it. Cartographers, I mean, you mentioned earlier, Rory, about role player. Cartographers is the same design company, and that's a really good flip and write. I mean, I think that's a brilliant one. We've mentioned it quite a few times. Tiny Towns, depending on how you play that, Tiny Towns is also a flip and write. Hadrian's Wall is like a Euro game, flip and write, to the point that you're playing it and you don't even realise it's a flip and write game.
Ooh.
It's only that you're writing. It feels like a Euro game. It feels like you are using this resource to get that resource, to get that resource, to get victory points. And you're going up tracks. Although the tracks are horizontal rather than vertical.
Well, that's
the only real difference. So you get this massive... I mean, it's the most complicated roll and write you'll ever see in your life. It's 2 sheets of paper, which appears to look like an Excel spreadsheet with Roman artwork added to it. You've got meeples, you've got resources, and what happens is you'll pick some meeples, and then you have a card will be revealed, which shows you what other meeples you get. So everyone's in a roughly similar situation, and we'll also tell you what the trade value of what certain goods are. you will then spend these resources to basically tick off boxes on your sheet. And as you tick off a box that's got a symbol in, that gives you another one of those resources or allows you to tick off something in another track. Where the Eurogame element comes in is you've got various things. It's Hadrian's Wall, you can build the wall, you can train troops for the garrison, but you can also do Roman developments. You can make a theatre, you can make a temple. You can do all kinds of things, and the beauty is it's chaining these actions together to do something else. It doesn't feel like, Oh So Clever, which is the big roll and write game which was popular a few years ago. It feels like someone's taken that basic concept and made a Euro game out of it, and I really, really like it.
Excellent.
And I think, Andy, you might as well.
Ooh, because I am not a big fan of roll and writes or flip and writes. I'm not going to lie to you. Cartographers, I think you're right, is probably the best example of it. Alora really likes cartographers, but I find them a bit dull.
Which is why I think you should need to try this one.
Okay. Happily do so. I mean, you've kind of sold it to me with the you're basically playing a Euro in disguise. I'm like, all right, that'll do.
Well, actually, it feels more like you're playing a flip and write in disguise.
Oh.
Because of the meeples and the resources, it feels more like a Euro game where you're, rather than using worker placement and putting your workers on a part of the board, you're crossing off part of your piece of paper.
Oh, okay.
So it feels like you're playing a flip and write in disguise. It feels like, hang on, this is Euro game I'm playing here. Surely I've got meeples and worker placement. Surely.
Okay, I am happy. Have you got it? Are you happy to?
Yes, I have.
Right then, next time.
Yes. It doesn't take too long either. It's actually surprisingly quick.
Okay.
For its level of complexity, it's surprisingly quick. Also, because it's, like as I said, a flip and write, it's all happening at the same time, so you don't have to wait for someone else to do their turn.
Oh, that's good.
To make your decision, so you can carry on going. Which means, when you play a Euro game with Andy, right, and he does that thing where he goes, "Oh God, no! Oh crap! I've made the wrong decision." Imagine 4 people around the table doing that at the same time.
To be fair, Steve, you are not a stranger to that
No,
emotion.
no, I'm not. Exactly. I most definitely am not.
Well, it's usually 2 turns after he goes, "Oh crap! I've done it wrong."
I find that's because you haven't told me the rules properly.
I have always told you the rules properly, Steve. You said you've just forgotten them because there's quite a lot of them.
That's probably true, actually.
All right, you've sold it, Mr. Tudor. Count me on the bandwagon.
I'll have to take you through it.
Is it a new game? Is it from 2021?
It is indeed. It is a game. It is a game that was released in the last 12 months.
Bloody hell! Polyhedron Collider in up-to-date shocker.
Go on then, Rory. Since I missed you out earlier, you pick a game.
That's fair enough. My second game did come out in 2020. 21, whatever. What year was it? Last year. The game that came out last year. I got this to the table several times, and I'm picking it. It was on my list, but mainly to be contentious. Who goes there? Second edition.
Ooh, that's going to stir the pot up. That is.
Fight!
It is not a perfect game. There are parts of it that are clunky.
You're right, it's not.
Right, the gloves are off right now.
Right. I'm going to put my hands up, right. There are parts of this game that are clunky. There's rules in this game that I flat out just ignore and, house rule parts of it because it just is bad. But I really enjoy this game. The people I've played with the same group of people several times this year. First edition, then when the second edition came out, I told them that I've got the new version, and they were chomping at the bit to get it to the table. And we played that, and I think it's a good upgrade. I really enjoy it. I love the fact that this game builds paranoia that someone in the game at some point is going to become the villain, that everybody starts out being cooperative and collaborative, and then it all falls apart and you get really worried and nervous. The atmosphere that this game creates around the table is brilliant, even though what's happening on the table is a little bit bumpy in points.
Isn't. Yes. I have to admit, the way it builds the paranoia is excellent. It really is. The way you start off completely cooperatively collaboratively, and you are cooperative. There's no doubt about it. It's not like in Battlestar where somebody might be a bit dodgy. Nobody is right at the start of the game. It's completely clear. And then, the cards start coming out, and all of a sudden the knives come out with it, and fingers started getting pointed, and I'm not sleeping with you, you're dodgy, etc., etc. So, you've got the alien clap. I'm not bunking up with you. So, that aspect of the game is excellent. I have to admit, it really is.
I think it's a really hard game. I've played this, I said, at least half a dozen times last year, and I've not won it once. There's been times where I've lost it fair and square to the thing, and there's been other times where it's all fallen apart and we've all died. But it was a rewarding experience getting to that point. So who goes there? Second edition from Certifiable Studios. One of my best games at 21.
Yeah, I have to disagree with you.
Here we go.
Weirdly, actually, I find this quite interesting because I really like Unfathomable and you don't. And you really like Who Goes There and I don't. And I think it's almost like the reasons you're saying you don't like Unfathomable are the same reasons why I don't like Who Goes There. It's like as if we're after the same thing, but subtly different. I do find that quite fascinating. So I thought this game was a co-op game pretending to be a hidden traitor game. Because I did not see the point of the hidden traitor mechanic, because you still have to beat the game, and then it's only down at the end whether the hidden traitor, can pull a victory out or not. I found that quite, I almost want to say pointless, but uninspiring would be the word I'd use, because the game, as you said, was hard, and just playing the game was hard, and then I did not understand the point of the thing, because the thing still had to win the game and get to the helicopter at the end and get all the cards it needed for the helicopter to escape, and then do this whole thing of having one human on board for a snack and this. I just felt it's like, well, this game's difficult just trying to get to the point where you can do that.
Yeah,
and if the alien could have won by just the alien being on board the helicopter, which by the way is what happens in the films, then I wouldn't have had such a bother with it. But this whole thing of having such stringent win conditions made me kind of go, well, I'm struggling to even get to that point, and even if I get to that point, it's potential we're all going to lose anyway.
Yeah.
And it was the last reveal. I don't know. I felt it. I found the hidden traitor aspect almost superfluous, because I think I even got infected when we played. As all hidden traitor games have, there was that problem of like, well, I've been infected. I need to know the rules of what I can do when I'm infected, and there's no handy reference in front of me, and I can't say, Andy, pass me the rules of infection, would you?
Well, I certainly missed the thing.
But I was like, well, I'm infected. What happens now?
Honestly, nothing. That's the thing.
That was the problem.
No pun
there was
intended.
nothing. Yeah. I don't know. It felt like, I mean, the co-op aspect of the game felt okay. It felt very, very similar to Dead of Winter, to the point where I think thematically it didn't make any sense. Like, why am I burning for a deck of cards to see what's in the kitchen? Surely I know where the carrots are kept.
That's the bit I struggled with as well. Going outside because, shit's been scattered everywhere kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
You're rooting through the snow. You don't know what's out there. Something could bite you, as indeed it does in the film. The outside made sense. But the flimsiest door in human history, coupled with shit scattered across what you would imagine is a fairly organised science station, and scientists are fairly fastidious about putting things in the right place. I kind of agree. Thematically, it was a bit of a mess. Now, I think I liked it more than you, Steve, but I did find it a little disappointing that I think it's just too hard to get to the end of the game, because I played it now 2 or 3 times, and every single time I've not got past the third act.
Question for you on that. Sorry. Did you find how the characters you pick for your game changed the game? That's probably a question for Rory, who's played it more than once. Because when we played it, I felt like there wasn't much co-op. I just don't remember us playing cooperatively at all. We didn't use each other's strengths for the first however long you get where you're not infected at all properly. And on top of that, we didn't have a chef or a cook or whatever it is in it. And therefore, as soon as we get to our food round, we're off.
Yeah.
And
No,
it just didn't feel it worked.
Yeah,
That might have been the players rather than the game.
No, I think Sid, you're absolutely right. This game, almost part of the pre-sequence of this game is us deciding what team we're going to put together. Everybody that I've played with, we've all played several times now, so we're all very familiar with the exception of the very latest characters. We're all really familiar with them, what they do, what they're really good at, who they work well with. So part of our pre-sequence is which characters are we going to pick. Whereas I think when you first play this for your first time, you just go, I'll pick this guy because he's got a dog. Yeah. I'll pick this guy because he's got a gun. This one's got a flamethrower. That must be cool. It's not until you see those used or you accidentally use them the way they're meant to be designed that you go, right, this is how it works. And now you've got that synergy in the team to really collaborate and cooperate to get the win.
Anyway, I controversial one in Polyhedron Collider, but it's interesting that the difference in opinion between Unfathomable and that. In the end of they're both going for a similar kind of games, and we both love and hate them for very minor reasons, I think.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things.
But I think you're right. They are opposing. I think in Who Gets There, one of the things I really like about it is the fact you've got so many choices of what to do and how to diversify and how you're going to collaborate. Whereas I felt in Unfathomable, you didn't have that. And I think if that's what you're saying, that you felt you just had too many choices, you didn't know what to do, and that all of them just felt a little bit redundant and pointless.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, I didn't feel like anything I was doing was actually helping. Especially when you go for it, like, I'll search for a deck. Oh, we get attacked by a thing again. Oh, we get attacked by wild dogs again.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? I'm not getting anything useful. And there was a point, I think, when we came to the end of like the first, like, there's like 3 phases to the game. The end of the first phase, and we're like, how are we supposed to win this game? Because we need like 15 helicopter points or whatever it is, and we got 2.
You do get more per card as the game goes on.
Yeah,
but again, it's kind of the let's just burn through the decks as quickly as possible. It's kind of the dead of winter problem as well. But I think we did definitely play it wrong, and I wonder if Rory can probably confirm this, that we're probably supposed to spend the first third of the game building better kit rather than arsing around outside.
I think my tactic is usually first day you send essentially half of the team are going to go outside to burn through that deck. The other half are inside getting food, getting equipment. And then in day 2, you swap over. And then in day 3, you then mix and match. You just mix and match because you just root through decks. That gives, so the first team go and get loads of XP, get the helicopter points, where team B are getting all their equipment. You trade all your stuff that you need to, so everybody's got a bit of a head start going into day 2. That's how I've tried to do it. It often falls apart, but that's what the thing is there for. The thing's there to kind of that up.
Okay.
Right then, Mr. Lewis, pick another game for us.
I have many games for you, sir.
Yes, I know, that's the problem.
I know. I'm spoiled for choice. Now, my second one, I think, is going to have to be actually another game from 2021 in an up-to-date shocker. I'm going to go, weirdly, with Tinner's Trail.
Ooh.
By Alicat Games. Now, this is a remake of a Martin Wallace game from many years ago. And I don't know what. I mean, it's not a particularly complicated game. It's not a big flash game or anything like that, like our usual fare. It's not even a big, fat, boring, heavy, dry Euro. It's a medium weight, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours if you mess about, game about mining tin in Cornwall. So not the most exciting of subjects either.
I actually walked past a tin mine when I was in Cornwall on my holiday earlier this year, and I immediately thought, look, a tin mine, just like Tinner's Trail, like Andy would like.
There you go, you see. Now, Alora's been sort of shouting at me in the background to mention Bristol, but no. It's all right. But I ultimately, Tinner's Trail is basically a bidding game, and I quite enjoy bidding games. But it's wrapped up in essentially buying plots of land or prospecting for tin, and it turns out copper as well, in Cornwall. So the maps that you're on is essentially divided into all these little plots of land, and the idea is you've got a few cards that you can play now and again to give you a bit of a head start, and the idea is I want to go onto this plot of land, and you're kind of taking a bit of a gamble as to whether the plot of land you have, because there's a load of tokens all over that you set up at the start of the game, that they're randomly distributed. You don't really know what's in there. So is it going to be is it going to have shitloads of tin and copper, or is it just going to be basically a bog full of water? And that's the unknown. And everyone gets to bid in this. And you then spend some actions to sort of pull this stuff out the ground, sell it at the end of the round for points, and at the end of the round you can spend the money that you make on buying points. Now points get more expensive towards the end, the further the game goes on. So you've kind of got this nice balance as to whether you want to spend all your money early on when the points are cheap, but have no money to actually bid on anything going forward, or wait till the end of the game and hopefully get more money and obviously buy points when they're more expensive. So there's this nice little sort of strategy, but it's not a particularly complicated game. It's quite pretty. It's quite busy once you get lots and lots of cubes on the map. But you can buy things like steam pumps and trains and things which can shift water out of the mine. Because every time you try to mine, more water comes in. So it makes it harder. But I just find it quite an appealing little game, really. I've taken to it quite well. It's not a typical Martin Wallace like Brass, where you play a card to do something. Yes, but you can kind of feel where the sort of the Martin Wallace is. So yeah, I really liked it. So I was a little gutted I missed the Kickstarter for this one, Shock Horror. But having sort of seen it and played it at Expo last year, I was lucky enough to get a copy of it. So yeah, really enjoyed it, really like it. Beautiful little game, quite fun, easy to teach, easy to play, and there's just the right amount of player interaction because there's this bidding process. You can bid antagonistically and be a bell end. It's brilliant.
So unlike you.
Because you get this lovely bluffing element about it. It's like, are you bluffing? Because you've prospected this. You know what's there. Are you just being a tit and trying to drive the price up? Or is it genuinely, really, really good? I love that aspect of it. So you kind of got this lovely player interaction and a bit of gamesmanship, as it were. So I like it. I really like it.
Mr. Gill, would you like to pick another game?
I would very much like to pick another game, Gaffer. And what I would like to pick is an RPG, if I'm allowed to.
You are allowed, but we'll allow it this once.
Now, it's my real passion, isn't it? Let's be honest. Whilst this year I have played a lot more board games, we have also played a lot of RPG this year with lockdowns and various things like that. And this is quite an old RPG I'm going to put on the table, but it's one we started this year. So I think it's about 5 years old now. And it's Coriolis from Free League Publishing, which
yes,
I feel I have to bring up because it has been one of the finest examples of an RPG I think I have played.
Do you know what, Sid? We can even get it on this year as a technicality because we're playing Mercy the Icons campaign and Book 2 came out this year.
That is
Job done.
Absolutely. There we go. So I feel completely vindicated. It's absolutely valid for this year's submission.
Cutting edge. Love it.
Although we have not played the second campaign book. No, we started the second campaign book, haven't we?
But there are elements of the second campaign book that have come into the game. Let's just say that.
But, it's a standard kind of Mutant Year Zero engine RPG. So dice pool based game, and it's. What's the description everyone gives? Lawrence of Arabia in space, mixed with Firefly, mixed with a Western, mixed with pretty much any kind of expanse, kind of epicness, fantastic lore and history, an entire world that is beautifully put together. I mean, it is if you don't want to play it, just buy it to read it because it is magnificent just in its history. And I don't know why this one landed so well with us. I still don't really fully appreciate why it's been so good, but I think it's been a lot of different things. It's been the players we've had, it's been the story, it's the way that, Steve, you've weaved it together, it's been our characters, it's the fact that we've loved and lost characters. on a couple of occasions. It's just all the fantastic bits of an RPG. It's just beautiful. It's magnificent.
I think we've been playing the Mercy Icons campaign, and I think what that does is very good at starting you off small with this very narrow focus and slowly finding out that you're part of this bigger and bigger conspiracy, which, it's like the kind of mystery box thing. It poses more questions than it answers as you reveal more details. And I really do love that. I can see it's got you all hooked. You're all like, what? Who's this? Why are they doing that? What's this for? What's that do? And it's like, I know the answers to all these questions, but I can't tell any of them. Any of them yet. It's really fascinating.
I mean, the most recent session we played, which was last week as we record this podcast. We are now sat, I think it was with 4 options on where we can go next, and none of them feel like side quests. Which is fantastic, because you never know which thread to pull and how much of your cardigan you're going to unravel when you do it. It's fantastic. The universe that it's built is just unbelievable. And I think the best bit about it is that it feels kind of grounded. The universe that we're sat in could actually happen. We're not playing around with magic or anything like that. There's no horrendously strong psychic powers. I mean, there's mystics, which I'm not going to go into just in case anyone wants to start playing it, but they're not the same. There's it's more inklings than over sending lightning bolts everywhere and stuff like that. It's not that, and the technology is just advanced enough to be feasible but not silly, and I think that makes it all the more relatable, which is something that we've talked about before, that having a relatable universe makes it even better.
Yeah, I think relatable is true, but it's also still quite foreign, still quite alien. That Middle Eastern kind of flavor that it runs, really embedded within the game. It's not, it is different, and that's exciting as well. So, but it's as you say, it's close enough. We all understand what an Arabian coffee might be and things like that, and some of the kind of the settings and things. But how that's woven into like a technological, futuristic society, it's literally, for me, is a really epic space opera. People describe The Expanse as a space opera, and that's exactly how it feels when we're playing it. And as you say, Steve, that the way that it develops your characters and they grow with the story almost. And I think the thing with Coriolis that I thought was very different to things like D&D and some of the other games is we were able to, I think, rather easily weave characters into the lore or use the lore to help our characters grow. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe because it's quite contained, it's quite compact in a single book, whereas D&D's become this kind of sprawling, massively complex behemoth, almost too unwieldy to bring together. Whereas with Coriolis, all of our players, every one of us, we found our little niches. We were able to build characters around the different factions and pull in little bits of story, and it's really hit a point with me, this one. It's just fantastic.
Can't argue. It is wonderful. Thoroughly deserving of a mention.
Yeah, and the multiple Emmys or whatever Ennies it's had and all that kind of stuff. It's proper. It's earned every award it's got. And we were last year I think I was waxing lyrical about Alien, but this is nothing like that. This is completely different to Alien, and it's probably better actually. I'll tell you why it's better, because I think they do things differently. This is a fantastic campaign. This is an epic campaign game. Alien, and we'll probably talk about it in the future, I'm not sure lends itself as well to a campaign. I think it lends itself better to short, snappy, cinematic, multiple, short, one shot, two shot type things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. So that's Coriolis. Who's next? Who wants to pick? Everyone's done 2 now, so who wants to pick the 3rd? Go on, Andy. You've made a noise.
I have made a noise. I am now guilty. We remember the story of when I met somebody behind Starbucks just outside Tewkesbury early last year. Well, I have and we all know that I'm a sucker for a good story. And I have to admit, I have not played as good a story as this for quite some time. And it is Tainted Grail from Awaken Realms. Now, the game was actually originally released in 2019, although I didn't actually get it until 2021, so damn it, it counts. And I spent many an evening on the bounce just playing this and playing this and playing this because it is so goddamn absorbing. For anyone who hasn't heard the previous podcast that we've talked about it, god damn it, go away and listen to it. But in a nutshell, this is Arthurian legend, completely twisted. The land is covered by this weirdness. And you are basically a village bum. You're a nobody because the village heroes actually went off to try and sort things out and bad shit happened to them. So it's down to you to go and find out what happened. And in doing so, become the stalwart hero of the land, or at least that is the impression I've got. I haven't finished the campaign yet. I'm about halfway through it. But it is brutally hard. But the campaign, the story is massively branching. Every decision is truly difficult and will affect the rest of your game. So no matter what you do, it has an impact on your future. Maybe not straight away, but it will impact your future. And because of there's so many options, you can play it multiple times and still not have the same game or see the same options again. So it is just wildly absorbing. It's a bit like kind of choose your own adventure, You'll go to a site, you'll read a passage. Do you go and talk to the knight, or do you go and dig a hole and, try and rob the grave? If you do this, then you'll get this status, turn to this section, and the story continues there. So it is just wonderful. And it's truly brutally hard, actually, as well. It is like playing Forbidden Lands in a way that, your combat, there is a real risk of death. It's not like Dungeons and Dragons where, because magic, you come back to life. You've encountered a wild rabbit. It's chewed your foot off. It is pretty much like that. It is really hard. But that just makes it so much more engrossing for me. So, and of course, it's very beautiful. It's Awaken Realms. There's tons of miniatures, most of which are unnecessary. But it just adds to the feeling of the game. And I am so glad that I ended up buying it. It is absolutely magnificent for me.
Cool. I've managed to only play one game of this so far, just due to lack of time. But I can see why you think this way, Andy. I really do.
I'm glad.
I did like the first quest and then reset it. Took me ages to sort out the bloody cards for that game.
Yes. Setup's a bitch.
Yeah, but I can see why it's a fascinating story. I've been told that that's possibly one of the worst adventures is the first one. It gets better as you go along. So, yeah, I need to get back on that. Right, I need to pick a game here. Do I pick an RPG or another board game? Oh, I've got too many choices. Do you know what? I'm going to pick a game. Oh, God, Andy's just highlighted the game he thinks I should pick on the spreadsheet. And
I think you should.
I kind of agree with him. So I was going to mention Destinies, because I really like Destinies, and it is very similar to Tainted Grail, and I've actually managed to play that more than Tainted Grail just because there's no setup involved. Well, there's a minimal setup compared to Tainted Grail. But yes, Andy has highlighted Ankh. Woohoo! Third in the Eric Lang miniatures heavy games of area control. Fascinating selection system in the way you actually do your actions. So it's an area control game in which you are taking on you are Egyptian gods and you have your followers, and the idea is the game is supposed to take place over eons. It's not supposed to be like centuries, decades even. It's not supposed to be like all happening at once. Cities are supposed to be rising and falling, settlements being made, obelisks are being built, and pyramids and such like. And you will have your gods and your followers, and of course, with it being a Simon game, your god is a ridiculously oversized miniature. It's like about 6 inches tall, overly detailed. But what's really, really interesting about this game is the way you take actions. There is an action selection kind of board off to the side. And when you take an action, you have to pick 2, and they have to be done in an order going from top to bottom. But when you select an action, you move this action along the track. And when it gets to the end of the track, something happens. It kicks off another stage of the game. So there's a very careful balance about how you select your actions, because not just your action you choose, but if that action kicks off something, can drastically change the game. So it's all about trying to get things in place, ready for when someone does that kick-off system. It's not without issues. It's controversial because as rules as written, there's a concept where about 2/3 way through the game, the last two players will merge. And in our experience, that's not particularly fun. I will say there are variations that the whole book has got, like a book of different setups. The Kickstarter exclusives came with this huge monster miniature, which basically gives to the person who's in last place if you do a different setup rule. So there are different ways to do it. But Eric Lang has even gone on record and said, I was trying something a bit crazy here, so he intended this to be controversial almost. But the actual area control and the way the game works, I think, is brilliant and is surprisingly complicated for a game and in depth. Sorry, surprisingly complicated and deep for a game that can be played in such a relatively small amount of time because the rules are quite straightforward.
It is, yeah. I can't disagree with any of that, Steve. I think it's a really clever game. I mean, I haven't played Rising Sun yet, but I'm going to make the statement that it's probably the best of the three he's done.
I've got to admit, I think Blood Rage, is easier to get to the table, but I do think Ankh is easier to kind of get into quicker, if that makes sense. I think it feels a bit more intuitive than the other games. Rising Sun is definitely a more complicated game with a lot more going on, which makes it a bit of a bugger to get really into the detail of it. Partly because there's so many ways you can screw up the other players in Rising Sun. Like basically you can do seppuku and kill all your soldiers in the middle of a battle and get more victory points than the person who won the battle if you do it correctly. Think crazy things like that. But yeah, I agree. I think it is probably one of the best. Of course, it's C1. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Every single miniature looks amazing, and there's lots of them.
Yeah.
The only problem is I've got the Kickstarter exclusive, which came with miniatures, which you need an expansion to use.
Oh.
Because it comes with the Pharaoh miniatures for the extra factions that were Kickstarter exclusives, and you need the Pharaoh's expansion to use the Pharaoh miniatures.
Oh,
You don't have that then?
I don't have it because I only back to base level.
Oh.
I don't go Andy all in. I don't have the space for Andy all in anymore.
What have we learned?
no, I'm going to second you in that, Steve. I absolutely loved this game when we played it. I would, if you told me that we were going to play it tonight, I'd drive over after this podcast to go and play it. It after playing it, it immediately went on my want to buy list, and then I saw the price tag and thought, well, Steve's only 40 minutes down the road.
Yep.
Cracking game, absolutely belting.
No, agree, absolutely agree. It's the really clever action mechanic that sold it to me. Really, it's such a clever thing that you've got to do the actions in a certain order as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just move and then do something else, or you have to do things in a certain order, so you can't just do what you want to do. You've really got to plan ahead. And also, there's oh God, if I do that, then Sid's going to be able to do that, and I don't want him to do that. But if I do that, Steve's going to attack that, and oh no! So you've really got to think about it. It's really, really clever what's happening there. So yeah, very clever.
So that's Ankh. Right, who hasn't got 3 left? Right, Rory and Sid. It's between you two.
Oh,
Let's go next.
Are you? I'm ready to go. I've got my selection.
You go then, mate.
Go on then, Mr. Summers.
I'm not going to spend too long talking about this because I feel this is going to be a game that we'll probably review when Andy's finally pulled his finger out and played it properly. It's Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile. This came out from Leader Games at the beginning of 21. It took me a long time to get this to the table just because circumstance, and it is brilliant. It is a campaign legacy game. You're telling this story of this land. The land continually changes. The setup will be slightly different every game, and it will be you set those cards up at the end of every game you play, so the world is going to be different. It's brilliant. It looks fantastic. One of the best things about this game that I really, really like is that it almost seamlessly has this narrative that there's not like scenarios of you do this and you go off on this adventure, and it's the cards play out, and the events of those games actually do tell a story, and it's really nice to be able to kind of write that down at the end of it, which you have to do to kind of record the cards that you've taken out and the new cards you've put in, and who the new chancellor is, and who the new citizens are, or who was deposed, because it's a one versus many game where you are recruiting denizens to the world. You're trying to build up your forces to usurp the chancellor, or if you're the chancellor, you're trying to keep it. There's a few different ways you can win the game every game, and those conditions change depending on what happens in the former game. It just is sublime, and it took me, my first game, I double-handed it with my brother-in-law, where we each had 2 players, and we got through the introduction from in the rule book, and we were kind of like, well, now what do we do? And then we kind of figured it out, and okay, well, this game's good. We set it all up, got for the second game. The following night, we got it all out again and played it, and we got to the end of the game and realised we'd been playing it completely wrong, so cleared it all away. And then we got a third game, and then we got, right, now we know how to play. And I think that's one of the problems I think you mentioned, Andy, at the beginning of this podcast, or before we started recording, that the rule book is a bit twisted. It is not very clear, but oddly enough, when you're looking back for a rule later, it's very easy to find it.
Okay. So it's well organised, just badly explained.
Absolutely stunning game. Looks great on the table. The components are all fantastic. This story-driven narrative, and at any point in the game, you can just reset it back to the beginning or reset it to the previous game. I find this is the type of game that, now that I know how to play it, it's a lot easier to teach than it is to read the rulebook of. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any decent how to play videos online. They were all shite.
Yes, frequently are, actually, weirdly.
Say again, mate?
There frequently are, actually. Only Paul Grogan and a handful of others seem to have nailed how to teach games on a video, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
No.
Isn't it a 1v many, though? Because one of you plays the Chancellor and everybody else is kind of some kind of an upstart trying to get in amongst it.
Yeah, it's up to 6 players, 1v many, and those many, or what are they called? Forget the term now.
Not outcasts. Is it outcasts?
It might be outcasts.
Exiles.
Exiles. So yes, you get 5 a 6-player game. You get 5 exiles, 1 chancellor. At any point in the game, the chancellor can make an exile. Essentially, a worthy opponent could offer them citizenship, so they become part of this empire, which grows and grows and grows, becomes more powerful. But as it becomes more powerful, it starts getting spread more thin, so it limits what each of the members of the empire can then do, which is a really nice balance to it. It is, so you can play it 2 players, you can play it solo. It's got this crazy clockwork mechanism to work out what the opponent would do in a solo game.
Just
you
like
can
Root.
play it 2-player. It's kind of like having a Formula 1 car and using it to drive around the shops to get your Sunday newspaper. You can do it, but it's a bit shit. It's a bit pointless doing it. You don't want to. I've played this at 5 players, and at 5 players it really sang. It really worked at 5.
Okay. Brilliant. Yeah, I need to get it out. I've planned to play it this year, but as you say, it's a campaign game, so you kind of need the same players every time.
The same, well, you don't have to. It's because you can just pick up different people, or if I could bring my game over, the 5 of us could play, and just because the look of the draw, Andy, you've picked this guy. Well, he's a citizen because he was promoted last game from the last chancellor. Sid, you're going to be the chancellor this time. Steve and I are going to be exiles, and we just go. Your decks don't change.
Okay.
Your individual deck, it's the world deck that changes, which is the card. So there's, as the chancellor starts recruiting more, has more influence over like beasts as one of the 6 factions, there become more beast cards in the deck, so he's more likely to draw them, or she. Sorry,
okay.
and it's the slight movements, but it does create this wonderful narrative when you start working out why this mechanism does this. You start thinking about it thematically, and it goes, that makes sense. It's perfect.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's the kick up the arse I need.
Right then, Sid. I think you're the last person to go. Can you pick a third game?
I think I can.
Ooh.
And that is one that when we suggested playing it, or you guys suggested playing it made me a little bit nervous. I was a little bit scared, and that is, as you've highlighted it beautifully, the T game.
Tawantinsuyu.
Thank you very much, Andy. So this was my introduction to probably the heaviest game I've played this year, ever, I think.
Ever, yeah.
And that's what made me nervous. You know, before we played it, it was, gosh, how are we going to do this? I'm going to keep up and play it. But you put this on the table. It was relatively quick to set up, and it looked very nice with the kind of, is it Incan, this one? This is the Incan-based temple or Mayan, something
I think
like
it's Incan, but I'm not quite sure.
It's that kind of thing.
I think it's Incan.
Yeah, because it's like priest and shaman type things, and at the top of the tower, and
its full name is Tawantinsuyu, the Incan Empire.
Well, there we go.
There we go then. So it is Incan, and I don't even know really how to describe this guy. So you're gonna have to help me out, because I just remember being scared about it, and then, but.
It is a game in which you put meeples on a board, which allows you to take actions, and where you place them on, it's not like a worker placement. In fact, this is more similar to a roll and write than kind of like. It's got more in common with Hadrian's Wall, which you mentioned earlier, than a lot of other worker placement games, because it's one of those worker placement games you put a worker down and that worker stays there. And then that affects the rest of the game, because you can then kind of combo the worker you've put down with the workers that are next to it to get you more actions. So basically what you have is, rather than action spaces, you have the action in between two spaces. So you put your worker down, you can take one of the three, I think it's usually three connecting actions. Mm-hmm. But if you manage to do like two meeples the same colour, you can take two actions. If you've got there was something else you can do which makes you allowed three actions. You then got your little chap on the top of the temple who walks around, and what he does can affects how much it costs you to take certain actions, and then he does actions himself when he moves. Basically, it's one of those Euro games where there's lots and lots of things happening and lots of ways in which you can score points. And it's a bugger to teach. And it's a bugger to learn, because it feels quite different to a lot of other games. It's not like, oh, here's a worker placement spot, you go there, you get resources, you go to this worker placement spot and get points. No, this is like, this allows you to get cocoa, this allows you to get corn, this allows you to get gold, this allows you to buy a rug. You'll want 5 rugs if you want to win.
That's true.
And all those little mechanics had, they kind of built on them. So like, if you had certain rugs that joined up in certain ways, you got certain bonuses as well. So there was like little things within things. And I was like, this is nuts. There's no way you could know all these things all the time. So I binned off stuff, just jettisoned loads of stuff and just focused on a little part of the game. And
well, it's designed by Big Davey T, so it is typically Turksy in its complexity and structure. I mean, you can tell David Turksy's had his hand in this quite considerably, because it is, it's simple on the surface, but once you do one thing, it kicks off a myriad of other things as well.
And I almost felt like three of us played it, and it felt like we were all playing slightly different games.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Because those kinds of games, generally speaking, if you play the same game as somebody else, you are not going to win. You have to play a different game, otherwise you're being direct competition with everybody else, so you're not going to get what you need. So, it's extremely well designed. It's extremely beautiful. I say, on the surface, the rulebook's not actually that easy to learn from, but once you kind of done it, you're like, this is quite straightforward. It is literally put chap down, do actions, get stuff, next player. Now, as you've hinted, Sid, there's a lot of that kind of get stuff bit kicks off quite a lot of other things, but in principle, it's quite a straightforward game. But it's really clever, actually. Another clever game, I think. But that's to be expected. It is.
I think the
Dave.
subtleties in the mechanics and the little extras that you sometimes, if I do that, I can get this little bonus, or if I do that, I'll screw Andy up on the next go round, or something like that. It was very. I appreciate the cleverness of it, I think, and how well made and how well thought out it was. It was a very, very nice game to play, and I feel less scared about them now. So we can have another go of something of them.
On Mars next, then.
Well, hang on. No, you scared me again now because you told me that was a brain baker.
It's slightly more complicated.
On Mars is the most complicated game I own, and you played my copy of Tawantinsuyu. By a long stretch, it just, yeah. And I've got the next one, actually. Board and Dice have sent us the next unpronounceable tea game.
Oh, yes. What the hell is it called? It's on my list of things to potentially buy.
I thought you'd already bought it.
No, I don't.
Oh, I thought you owned it. Oh, sorry.
No, I don't. Not yet. I mean, I will.
Well,
it'll be in my collection by the end of this year, I'm sure. Because it just has to be, because it's the kind of game I really love. Because it's Daniel Taschini, isn't it? Daniel Taschini,
yes.
Board and Dice,
yeah.
Unpronounceable game beginning with T.
Anyway, that's for something for a future episode.
Tanabasu!
We have selected.
They are.
Gesundheit. So, that's 3 games each. Is it possible, do you think, for us to select and agree between us of the games we played the best game of the year? I don't think there's a game we've all played enough of.
No, I was going to say,
We
because
can say unanimously.
No, I mean we could probably each pick one, but I don't think we'll agree on a single one, because
Yeah,
I think
unless someone can suggest one.
I would go with Ankh. I know I've only played it once, but I enjoyed it so much.
Is Ankh the only one that all 4 of us have actually played, though?
I think it probably is.
I think it might be the only one that all 4 of us have played. Yeah.
Unfathomable. We've all played. All 4 of us have played Unfathomable.
But Rory's put a veto in for
vetoing
that.
that, and Steve will veto who goes there. So
I don't agree that it's Ankh, though, because of the catch-up mechanism. It just pissed me off. Other than that,
that's understandable.
Other than that, I would almost agree, but I'm going to not, because it annoyed me and it ruined my day. So I'm going to obviously stick to my guns and say Tainted Grail, but other than Steve, none of you have played it, so we can't really have that either. So it's a no-score draw, I think.
Yeah.
I personally don't think, looking at that list, there isn't a standout game there that stands head and shoulders above the rest anyway. In the past, we've played games where we've gone, this is definitely the game of the year, and I don't think, based on what we've played so far, that there's one there.
I think that's fair. Well, there is. It's Tainted Grail, but you haven't played it, so it doesn't matter.
Let's all be honest. It is Coriolis.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Rory's not played it.
Do you know what I mean? I know Rory's not played it, but we'll just cut him out and pretend he said yes.
Well,
just
I'm quite
kick
happy
a yes from somewhere else in the podcast.
Your impassioned speech about this, I was immediately very excited to learn about this, to the point where I was almost going to go, next time you play, can I just come and watch? I'd be really interested to do that.
That's close enough to be an endorsement. Right, Coriolis, Polyhedron Collider, game of 2021. Done.
Yeah, and for technicality purposes, Mercy Icons Part 2 is the actual selection for 2021.
I was going to say, because we were playing Emissary Lost for most of last year.
Right then, folks, that's us for this evening. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back soon with a preview of 2022, which we all need to do our homework for. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. And don't forget, you can find us all over the internet. Just look for Polyhedron Collider. So until next time, happy gaming and tatty bye.
Ta-ra.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.